The meeting has been recorded.
But if you'd like to say hello to John Harvey, who has joined us on Zoom, come into the front room and say hi.
Hi. Oh,
How are you doing?
yes, indeed. Not so bad, not so bad.
Okay. Dave did suggest that I come up and combine with him next time he meets you, but then he forgot all about it.
Well, I'm going up with Alan sometime soon after Easter.
That's what you said last week. Anyway, great to see you. Okay, anybody else?
How is he sitting up? On there. Right.
That's the one.
Hi, John.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Yeah.
After a fashion.
Yeah. Wish you could be here. But anyway, you are
Yeah.
sort of.
I wish I could do a lot
You're
of bloody
straight.
things with it. I get a bit pissed off with it. I mean, God knows when I'll be able to get over to France.
Well, yeah, so it's going to be tricky. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought,
Anyway, good to see you.
yeah.
Hey, John.
Hi,
John. Roman here from Adelaide. Hope you're keeping well.
yeah. Oh, it's wrong. You know, you're in the shadow, Roman.
Oh, sorry.
You,
No idea where.
Yeah, no,
Is that
you
better?
can't. Yeah, for some reason you've got a darker face. How are you doing?
Oh, there's the camera. That helps.
Ah,
Oh, quite well, thank you. Yeah. Hope you're well. As well as could be expected.
yeah. Nice to see. Have you just made it over to Europe for the convention, or you got other things?
Yeah, well, I'm here for Corflu, and then next week I'll be over at EasterCon.
Right. So, yeah, making a face. It is good. Yeah.
I'll pass the microphone on to someone else who may want to chat to you.
Jerry's coming. We have John.
Hello.
Camera's over there.
Camera's over here.
Over there. Say hello.
Hi, John. I just
Hello.
walked into the room. Jerry's in here. And I just walked into the room and I went, we have John. It is so good to see you.
Yeah.
Who else do we have? We have Kat and we have Pat.
Right. We've got to start because they've got to track the room down for the meal afterwards. So talk to you later, John.
All right. Fair enough.
Give them back to you.
Sandra Bond, or as she's also known, Sandra Bond, should be here any moment, and that's all we're waiting for. Meanwhile, in case you don't know any of the people on the panel,
Just here.
My side.
Camera's here.
there we go.
With the mic, do you want to speak? Oh no, sorry, kicking off.
Just to get us going, I'd like each person on the panel to introduce themselves, just your name and what fan fund you were a delegate of, year, destination, your basics. Start bound at the far end, which I think is Joe. Yeah, they all work.
Hi, I'm Joe Siclari. I was on the Down Under Fan Fund back in 2007 or so. And so Duck is going to represent either side of this table.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, Steve Jeffery. I was the guest of the Corflu 50 fund for Corflu Maryland, Corflu Field in 2019.
Hello, I'm Roman Orszanski from Adelaide, South Australia. I was the GUF delegate in 1990 when I went to Den Haag.
I'm Sandra Bond. I was the European Transatlantic Fan Fund winner in 2023, attending Pepicon in Winnipeg.
And who am I again? Barry Kaufman. I was the Down Under Fan Fund delegate to the Australian National Convention in Sydney in 1983. Sometimes I wonder, why are we still doing this? Is this serving a purpose, or is it just another a fun fan tradition that we must do because we've always done it? Can I have some thoughts from the panelists on this? Okay, everybody leave the room.
So I came into fandom probably 90s.
You speak into the microphone,
Yeah.
it'll help people hear.
I came into fandom probably early 90s. I think at that point we were much younger. Well, I know we were much younger. Most of us had good jobs, most of us had income, and travel wasn't that onerous. And for about 30 years, until I got invited, I sort of missed the point of fan funds. I thought there was something that, yeah, okay, in the 50s, 60s, where travel was difficult and people get strapped, they were a good thing, but they've fallen out of use, because basically if you wanted to go to a convention, you could afford to go and do it. You didn't need to be funded. Now I can see the point of them coming back in. We're much older, we've got less disposable income, and not everybody that you want to meet can get to the convention you're going to be at. So yeah, I think they're sort of, the day might have passed, but maybe it's coming back again.
I think that a fan fund is a pretty clear, good example of the Theseus' ship principle, in that, they've changed over the years in almost every way since the early 1950s, when the concept was, first floated. Pardon me extending the metaphor of the ship. And there has been a lot of talk for as long as I've been in fandom, and that's 35 years, about how there is now no point in fan funds because anybody who wants to afford to go to a foreign convention can afford to do so with a little, saving. And whether or not that's so, I'm not going to sort of go into. Steve has already sort of touched on one aspect of that, but I think that a fan fund is far more than just a free plane flight ticket for some worthy person. I think that fan funds are one of the things that holds worldwide fandom together in an era where fandom is now so enormous, sprawling, disparate, and varied. And please don't think I'm saying in any way that this is not a problem. That this is one thing that still covers all of fandom as an umbrella in a way that very few things now do.
Here.
I think that there's still a role for fan funds. Not everyone has sufficient funds or the ability to save lots of funds because they've got other things happening in their life. And it provides a method for people to say, here's an interesting fan. They can't afford to go overseas, but we'd like to send them overseas to meet people there because we think they deserve to be seen and to meet people. So I think there's still a role for fan funds in that respect.
I actually have to agree with them.
You don't have to.
Yes, okay, I don't have to. But if you look at the function or some of the functions of fan funds, yes, they started out as sort of an introduction back in the 50s between, if you want, between different cultures, actually. But over the time, I've seen so many fans come through and had a chance to visit with many of them that I would have actually never seen before. Either they would not have come to the US in one case, and in some cases if they did, they would have come through it another way. And I'm glad that there was an opportunity for some of them to be able to travel around. It really is a benefit for those of us who are stuck at home as well. I think it is.
Okay, I can't disagree too much with that, but I can point out that when we started the fan funds, especially with TAP, but also I think with people, we who are aware of the history of fandom and who have been aware of people on the other side of whichever ocean, knew more about the people that we were nominating and inviting to come over, or thinking that this person should be sent over because they will make such a good case for us. That type of fan has become much more in the minority. I think the majority of people who go to general conventions don't know anything about the people who might be nominated. And so I would wonder, are there ways that we, as a sort of insider group, can make a better case to the outsiders, to the people who go to the local convention or to a Worldcon and don't know about the many links? Is there a way that we can not so much promote ourselves, but make people aware that there are these international convention connections, I should say?
Well, actually, I agree with you too. It's not what most people say. Anyway, the reason, yes, figuring out how to market it and get it out there, just call it what it is. It's marketing. We really need to be able to get the word out, and people need to communicate, certainly better than I could ever do. And that's is a really a big problem these days with the size, if you want to call it, of fandom. I'm not sure fandom that we want to try to reach every aspect of fandom. I don't think we can, quite frankly. I think we need to figure out the area that we do want to reach and maybe focus on that and use our resources that we want to spend on that to try to reach that group of people, but not try to reach that wide expanse out there that go to all the movies or anything else.
I take your point, Joe, but I think I will only agree with it up to a certain distance, because I feel very strongly that the fan funds, certainly TAF, which I'm obviously responsible for at the moment, but all the fan funds should be open to anyone who calls themselves a fan and meets the extremely simple requirements to be able to vote in this fan. I have an abhorrence of gatekeeping, and I really don't think we want to be saying, well, we should be marketing the fan funds to Convention X, but not bothering with Convention Y. Now, I appreciate that we only have a limited amount of resources and a limited amount of energy and social reach, but that doesn't, mean to say that we shouldn't be open to, if there's anyone comes along and says, well, what's this TAP thing then? Rather than saying, you're not our kind of fan, go away. We should, try, explain to them what it is and say, this is what it is. It belongs to all of fandom and not to any one subset of it.
But isn't there a sort of inherent gatekeeping in the concept of trip report?
That is something that has actually, exercised my mind. There is a tradition that fan fund winners, certainly the older and more traditional fan funds. I'm not sure there's ever been a Corflu 50 report.
Not required.
Not required.
Not required.
Yeah.
It's not required.
But, I mean, it's never required, and
But it's not even mentioned.
yeah. But
Well, being report
You need to
made,
write for you.
there is
yeah, I have to write one for people.
yeah, but there is this sort of unspoken promise that yes, a trip report is a good thing, and also thanks to the name of the organisation. But I always forget, if you complete a trip report within a certain amount of time after your trip, then they donate a wad of cash to your fund, which is very welcome. But yeah, I mean,
I'll have to say,
if a fan fund winner wants to do a trip report as a video or as interpretive dance or something, then go for it. As far as I'm concerned,
I believe that that at least Corflu guests of honor have done interpretive dances as their speak.
Sort of, you could talk about Rusty Haviland's presentation around the States was a show and tell, as he did as a trip report rather than a physical one that was printed.
But isn't the
Hold on a second, Keith, here, we're going to get you a mic. Anybody want? I'll just say, if anybody wants to ask a question or make a comment, just pick it up so we can see it, and Rob will get you a mic.
last year, the first time I think, we had a post-con report. I can't remember what it was called, memory book. Nick wrote round or sent emails around. Everybody was invited to contribute to it. Very few of us did, but it was there. And I mean, that is going to advertise, if you want, Corflu as a convention.
Yeah, a little off topic though, I think.
Well, no, because if you don't know what the convention is about and what kind of convention it is,
Yeah.
then you're not going to think, oh, I'd like to go to that, but I can't afford it, and start looking at the fan funds.
Oh, okay. I think Farah wants to say something. And
I was just coming at some oil and I'm really struggling.
oh,
Because I'm actually near Sandra.
I'm afraid because overbleeds everything.
No, I literally mean other people need to speak up more and use their microphones.
Right.
I can hear Sandra like a bell, beautifully.
yeah.
But everybody else, I'm only about 4 lines.
Okay, thank you. And also, when you guys, when you speak, all of you get closer to the mic.
About 2 inches.
Can I make a comment? Yeah. It seems to me that when fan funds first started, the people who were inviting somebody over knew about that person from their writings, and they were looking forward to seeing that person because they built up a picture of who the personality was, and they wanted to meet with person. And when I came into fandom sort of in the 70s, it was very much like that. And I know we do nominations and stuff, but it was almost a foregone conclusion who was going to go. Nowadays, at conventions, the number of people who actually read fanzines is, I don't know what proportion it is, but it's pretty small. So that sort of thing is just not going to happen. And those people, so if somebody comes over to Britain, to America now, we'll be big one. But most of the convention doesn't, and they don't care because they know nothing about that person. And I don't think there's much you can do about it because, that is written fandom. It's becoming a bit of a past, isn't it?
well, firstly, you say that in the 1970s, everything was a foregone conclusion, but it was in the 1970s that the only ever dead heat so far in TAP happened, between Bill Bowers and Roy Tackett. But also, yes, this is another example of how I was saying earlier about the Theseus' ship syndrome. Yes, the traditional fanzine fandom school of fanning is sort of on its way out, and along with all of us old wrinkly types. But that does not mean that fandom itself is on the way out. It doesn't mean that the fan funds are on the way out. And I think that it just is. I mean, when I was over in America, I took myself as a sort of, I had a twin aim in mind when I was travelling around. One was that I was determined to have a good time, which is fair enough. I think that would be expected The other was that I was going to represent European fandom to North American fandom. And if anyone was interested in that, then that would be wonderful. And if not, then they couldn't say that I wasn't actually available and open to doing that. There was occasions, I'm thinking particularly of my visit to Nestor in Boston, where I was sort of welcomed very politely, but it was, fairly plain that most of the club members, were only mildly at best interested in who I was and why I was there.
Well, I'm just wondering if, as you alluded, you just had a bit of a cool reception from Nestor, but are we sending people to the right destinations at this point? Does it make sense to send a CAF candidate to the Worldcon, where they're going to be one of 8,000 people wandering around, and most of the so-called Spanish fans or core fandom, or whatever you want to call them, don't go anymore? Maybe we should be picking different destinations.
But now it comes down to who are we expecting to donate? We know we're trying to get everybody we can to be involved and to vote, and a lot of those people might not be Corflu type fan attendees, but we do ask the Worldcons to help out with hotel rooms and so forth for the fan fund, the major fan fund candidates. Maybe if we didn't go to a Worldcon or didn't send the delegate to a Worldcon, we wouldn't even need to ask. I don't know.
Okay.
Allison has a hand up.
Jerry's losing her
Jerry's got the mic already. Oh, sorry.
For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Alison Scott. I want to pick up something you said a couple of minutes ago, which is, why are we sending fan funds to the Worldcon? Most core fans don't even bother to go anymore. You're not a core fan. You're way out on one little tiny side thing of fandom. The Glasgow Worldcon, we had tables, we raised £6,000 for the fan funds. That wasn't just from core fans, it was from the whole body of fandom who were at that Worldcon. Young people, old people, people from the UK, America, many other countries. It's very easy to sit in a little niche of fandom and think, oh, that's the really important bit. But it's actually a very big church. And one of the things that's really good about fandom is that as a fan fund member, you get to experience it.
Okay, then I'll go see what's going on, my love.
I think it's one of the things just lovely about the fans. That was a comment. But I guess we understand that, right? Yeah. Okay, what does the panel think?
I think you're dead right, because what happens as a fan fund winner, you may be sent to a particular convention, but at the same time you feel obliged to have a look around the other fanish groups in the area you have. And because you've won a fan fund, it relieves some of the cost of living. So you don't have to report to work. So a lot of fan fund winners then wander around the country for weeks, sometimes months, before returning home. And that's part, I think, of their feeling of obligation, that they were, given a free trip to go to this place. They'll go to the main convention, they'll find out about other fan groups, they'll go try and visit them, they'll talk to the local fans, they'll find out what they're doing, and eventually, when they get back home, they'll report on what they've done to other fans in their area. And that, I think, is part of the core of the fan fund design. Mission. Yeah.
Do other panelists want to answer Alison's question before I build on what she said?
I don't have a great deal to say other than that I fully agree with pretty much everything that Alison said.
Yeah, and I'm going to strongly agree with what Alison said. And when we talk about wanting our little niche to remain part of fandom and everything. I think presence at the WorldCon for fan fund winners or at the EasterCon when the WorldCon isn't in the UK is vital. And a much smaller example of I've been running Great Spanish Yard Sale fan fund tables at Boston for the past several years. And and number one, it is a great way for all of us offloading stuff to get rid of stuff and raise money for the funds. But just that visual, that awareness and people, and I haven't, even though as the TAF delegate, it's always been a TAF Guff, even though Guff doesn't come to North America. But it's like presenting the three major fan funds. At times, even like I invited Carl Brandon's Society to come and partake, but they were in a slump then, and that didn't happen. So it's the having that visibility and maintaining that visibility and spreading it. We talk about marketing. The WorldCon, as Bo Allison says, no, or there's always been a lot of people who don't go to WorldCons. WorldCons do not appeal, but it's the place. And while I don't do Dragon Con, there's a big bunch of fandom at Dragon Con. And when we look at different places, but I absolutely want fan fund winners to keep going to WorldCons when that's what the focus of the fund is. The other piece on that is I want to mention for decades, I used to think if I ever stand for a fan fund, it would be for Duff, because I do not have the financial resources, did not, to get to Australia, and that would be the way to go to Australia. And when the WorldCon was going to Dublin, and I'd always said, no, TAF, I go over the UK a lot. No, I don't need that. But it became my way of, gee, Walt Willis and his circle of friends, I was the last, they brought young people in over decades and brought them into their circle. I was the last one of those that they brought in that I'm aware of for like the last decade of their life. And suddenly the WorldCon was in Dublin. Well, Walter was from Northern Ireland. It was Irish fandom. And I'm the age they were when I met them and connected with young fans. And it was, here's a way I can go attempt to connect, be the glue between the generations. And being a TAF delegate or a fan fund delegate is different than taking your own personal trip. You are a representative, you are a delegate, you have different responsibilities, you get far different visibility. And it's hugely valuable. I'll shut up now.
Yeah, but that last point is an extremely important one. I mean, I did not quite fathom how different it was going to feel being a TAF delegate to travelling on my own dime until I actually came to make that trip. Whether other
I think it's about something Jerry said. So you see it as a form of time binding as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of speak from the perspective of someone who works on WorldCon, works on Murray Moore at the NASDAQ in Winnipeg, and the attitude from the conventions is that we want to support the fan funds. We really look forward to seeing the delegates coming. We want them to really be involved in the convention. We want to showcase them. And I feel that this is a very strong feeling, amongst the convention committees, that they really feel the fan funds are a good thing and like the idea of being part of it.
I'm going to say that the Corflu 50 group that I'm a part of and Rich is a part of, we're doing what you were thinking of when you were talking, Rich. We're doing getting the person that we most want to see here. TAF, it really now is a much bigger theater of operations. And Rich, part of it may be because you've already decided you don't want to go to WorldCons anymore. So why should we send TAF to something you're not going to be that.
That's a fair point. Yeah, the Corflu 50 was started specifically just to get people that we wanted to come to a Corflu that might not under other circumstances, you know. So it's worked out fairly well. We know kind of what the universe of potential nominees is, and throw names out, and a consensus develops, and it's been working pretty well now for 15 years, something like that.
Something that I've just been thinking of, I was saying earlier that the fan funds are not, with the exception of things like the Corflu 50, which are smaller and more specialised, but the larger and older fan funds, I was saying that they aren't the provenance of any one subset of fandom anymore. And if there's something I'm glad about, it's the fact that all the bollocks about, you know, fanzine fans versus media fans and all that kind of bickering that was around when I was new to fandom, that no longer seems to happen, and I'm very glad of that. But there is the fact also, I think, that because fan funds exist to send fans on between different communities all the way around the world, there is the obvious corollary to that, that the fan funds are going to appeal to people who are community minded in the fanish community, and those who are aware of the fact that, you know, that there is fandom literally in every continent and every city nowadays. That it's, you know, would be interesting to sort of send someone around rather than just be, you know, relying on seeing them on what would have once been fanzines and is now probably the internet. So, you know, in that sense, you know, the fan funds, you know, whilst they're open to any, you know, to all of fandom, they are going to appeal more to people with that particular mindset. And that mindset, I don't think, is confined to any one sub-community of fandom.
I think I need to disagree with you.
Okay.
The reason I'm saying that is that fandom, there are many aspects of fandom, but when you're looking at some of the, if you want to call the specialized areas, many of them are so big these days, especially if it's related to some kind of a media enterprise, that they are actually at least as big as our entire fandom, whether it's going to a Worldcon or at least the part that is related to the Worldcon. They have conventions already that hit 3, 5, and 8,000 and more people. And in fact, if you're talking comics, you're talking 180,000 people. That I don't think the fan funds actually serve in any way, shape, or form. They're sort of tagged on if somebody even bothers to go to those conventions. But I know I was talking to some fans in New York about whether people were going to travel to one of the media conventions there, and they didn't even know what the fan funds were. So in those big, especially media-oriented groups, I can't tell you if there's some others, the specialized focuses that I'm completely unaware of. But I think in those areas, we don't have much relationship to it all. However, I do think, and disagree with Rich, I do think that Worldcon still can provide a good resource, if nothing else, for helping to finance these things. Since MagicCon, which is, God, a long time ago, we've been giving money to every trip report that comes our way. And we try to make sure just a little bit of extra funds. It may not make a big difference in year to year, but if we can give a few $100s to keep the thing going, we felt that it's been a good resource for us to use. But at the same time, if you would ask me to provide $500 to Dragon Con or to the San Diego Comics Con, you would you'd see us turn away.
Yeah, we went to a Dragon Con, what, 10 to 20,000 people, and had almost no connection. The fandom I've experienced up to that point, there's almost no crossover at all.
Yeah. I think Z, you have something to say, and Rob, give her back. Thank you.
So hi, I'm a possible delegate for this year's TAF. There's a couple of others who are quite worthy in very different ways. And one of the things I have been campaigning on is going outside of this bit of fandom. Because the people that I have been going, hey, have you heard of this? I'm a candidate. Well, be a delegate. You know, do you want to vote for me? Have been people in media fandoms, like video game fandoms, because I have been talking to them for long enough to go, okay, but you are also obviously massively famished in this way as well. You just haven't found this like that. Because there is an age gap. Because you are under the age of, pardon me, but 50. Like one of my friends, who has very kindly mentioned me, she's lovely, was so frustrated by the state of the Wachowski saga that she got custom book cloth printed so that she could rebind the whole thing as a better Wachowski saga, and has been documenting the whole process, which strikes me as a very intensely this type of fanish endeavor.
Yeah.
And they are there, but we haven't been reaching out to them. But they're there, and they are in the media fandoms. We just need to finding out ways to let media fans know we exist will help find more people who are this type of fan as well, because we're not different species. We are the same things, just sometimes pointed in slightly different directions. That's all.
I think it's worth noting that there's a big difference between the commercial conventions and smaller conventions. And those people who might be a media fan aren't necessarily involved with big companies producing the big media conventions. So there is quite a distinction there to be made.
Yes. Alison, you wanted to make another point?
You wanted to make. Okay. Thank you. Who do you want to go first?
I saw Alison first. So.
You have the microphone. You have the microphone. You can call after seeing
What he said about what she's asking, I think, looking at least is to appeal to those who are aware that there is such a thing as a community of fandom, rather than just simply an opportunity to be sold things. The person you referred to, who's putting a lot of work into improving the saga. Obviously, that's a half ear, it's obviously part of the community. And that's what we're all talking about. We're talking about having a broad reach for a community. It's Big Ten fandom, as the other phrases talk about this.
I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So first, we talk about DragonCon. In fact, it's a large convention. I think it is still a volunteer-owned convention. We made friends with a podcast that comes out of Atlanta called You Go Girl, and they are DragonCon's their native convention. Their relationship to DragonCon is exactly the same as my relationship to MrCon. They do all sorts of things there that you would find completely vanish. You know, it is just a different part of this huge thing. But DragonCon is actually a very long convention that has been going a long time. It has its own traditions. The fact that if you visit DragonCon, even as a Bangkok delegate, you may find it quite difficult to find your tribe here because it is huge. And there are, of course, people who just want to consume there, but there are people who just want to consume at the WorldCon. There are people who just want to consume at all conventions, except really maybe the very tiny ones. But that's not what it's entirely about. My other example is Australia, which is quite a small fandom. And so it's got that thing that Britain has to some extent, all the fans are mashed together and give it more very good but there's still little pockets of it. The South Side Guff delegate, Cat Clay, is connected with traditional bits of fandom in Australia, but she is also a games writer who writes Call of Cthulhu-based scenarios for Dungeons and Dragons, and came as a delegate to WorldCon, whereas along with doing a lot of rather silly and hilarious fan things with all of us, she also met all the, because Glasgow was an incredibly D&D focused convention for various reasons, it's still part of the same thing. And so she met a load of people who were into that there. And people, when you do these trips, it allows people to make tons of different connections. And it is that spider web of connections that helps us feel that we are all part of the same thing. And it is all part, still very closely related to the sorts of things we like. Exactly, not because I get that. Okay, what's the panel?
And now Jerry.
What does the panel think?
Well, for my part, I think that it would be lovely if I could spend 24 hours a day popularising the concept of tap and the other fan funds to every little corner of fandom. In practice, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the resources and facilities, and I don't have the talent. I do as much as I can, and I've been doing things like serialising my trip report across different fanzines to give as much possible chance for people to see one piece and think, oh, well, that maybe that's interesting. I'll go and find out some of the other ones that have been published elsewhere. I've also been the first, as far as I'm aware, fan fund delegates to have a piece of the report published as part of the podcast. So thank you for that, Alison and John and Liz Patty. And I'm honestly rather proud of this, because this is showing that the fan funds are capable of changing with advances in society and technology, because let's not forget that since the fan funds began, the earliest fan fund delegates travelled around the world on ships, because commercial airliners were still very new and very expensive, and even with fundraised, crowdfunded things, they were beyond the means. So I think we cannot ever hope to reach every little corner of fandom. We can just do all that we can to be open, to reach out whenever we see an opportunity. And on a slightly related note to that, I think I would just like to say that I think Dave Langford does a bloody amazing things with the TAP website. The amount of free resources that are available there, you can spend an entire week just browsing all the interesting stuff that's there. And this is the man who wouldn't have 45 years ago.
And
so
the money that flows in through that website, through the donations, is very helpful. So I wanted, again, to build on Allison with a different example. When I found out that I was the top delegate, and I was even thinking along these lines before, it's like, yes, I'm well known to a lot of both Worldcon fans and a lot of Brit fans. And yes, I was spending time, I say, with Lillian Edwards. It's like, but in terms of the meeting new people, and for me, English is my language, and I'm enough of a communicator that I've never really had the comfort going into countries where English is not the first language, the primary language, because I don't want to be an ugly American and assume I want to be with a native speaker, whatever, be able to communicate. It's incredibly important. But I had met Martian Clock at a SmothCon when he had a scholarship to come. And Claire helped do the fine negotiations, so I wasn't just asking to his face, do you have a guest bedroom? Can I come and stay with you? And I went to Poland. I went to Krakow. And at the Worldcon, there were a couple of other Polish bands, including another one named Martian. There were multiples of them. And they were so thrilled. It was the first time a FanFun delegate was coming to Poland. And they were, it's like this was a huge deal to them. And I'm kind of saying, oh, that's neat. And out of that trip, I both met more. And now, the revived idea, every issue has had an article by a different Polish fan. They connected where there was like a Polish track at Worldcon, and Polish fandom is working on connecting with the rest of the world. And TAF, and then when Mike Lowry went on his trip with help from the Polish fans, he didn't just go to Krakow, he went to like 4 different cities in Poland. And building on that and building in that web of things is just enormously important. And it's one of my points of pride that I, kind of stretched beyond my comfort zone because that seemed important, and that we're getting these results out of it, 6 years later.
Yeah. On a similar note, since we're talking about Poland, this year's TAF race, which is open at the moment, we have 3 candidates. We have Z, they're British. We have Jan Vanek, who is Czech, and the third candidate while Z is a Pole, is actually resident in Denmark. So I honestly don't think we could, really get much more of an international lineup than we have.
Because the Down Under Fan Fund can't get that international because it's specifically to Australasia, it's specifically to Australia or New Zealand. So it's a little more limited in you're not going to do a lot of outreach to, Papua New Guinea.
But we should notice that the GUF delegates often go further than just Britain.
And I'm going to say I believe GUF is dying. We haven't got a candidate. Nobody's stepped up in the current administration to find out. We haven't been able to find anybody that wants to stand. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, maybe we could reach out to the Penguins.
I understand they have a good budget.
Sandra, can I ask you about the practicalities of being a TAF delegate? Because it's a long time when you're working home. If you've got a job and you go to your employers and say, I want to take the next 3 months off, what sort of response are you likely to get?
I would probably expect you'd get a dusty answer, but part of the reason that I stood for TAF when I did was that I didn't have a job at the time. And therefore, if I won, I figured that, I can actually take a nice long trip and not have to worry about what it would do to my holiday allowance. So that's my answer.
Yeah.
Mike Lowry is full-time union employee, and he went and talked and and negotiated to be able to have the time off, which is not all that easy in America.
Add to that, Kurt Phillips was only able to take a fortnight. His employers were hospital were very tough, and how to fit a TAF trip into a fortnight is according to a pint pot, frankly. Don't know what Kurt's going to say when he finishes his TAF report, which he's apparently working on.
Yeah, which brings back to, have we missed out on people because they've had to basically, accuse themselves from standing?
Almost certainly, but I mean, and whilst that's a sad thing, there are, I cannot see any way that we could sort of tweak things to make it possible for people in that kind of situation to stand. If anyone who does have any ideas on that, now's the time to shout out.
I should mention the flip side of that is that it increases the likelihood that people who are either unemployed or students, young students, will be able to make the trip, and therefore it'll bring in more new blood.
Well, yeah, now we have to think of who those young people would be that we want to nominate. Do we know it? Should we talk about trip reports? Anybody written one? How many people in this room, in the audience, are fan fund? What should I say? Have achieved a fan fund? Just wondered. Quite a few. Yeah. So the rest of you, why didn't you? I mean, why didn't you stand? Keith wants to say a word on that.
Oh, sorry. I mean, going way back, life was much simpler. There was one convention in Britain, EasterCon. There didn't seem to be that many in America, although there certainly were more than one. But even the WorldCon was manageable in the sense that there were 1,000 people there. But more than 1,000 people, I don't think I would enjoy it, I'll put it that way. And as a TAF candidate goes to a WorldCon, I didn't want to be a TAF candidate. Okay?
Okay.
I actually did stand for TAF, but I lost. Oh, so I didn't have to write a trip report, which is great.
Speaking of trip reports, this is I sent an opportunity for me to slip in a plug here. I mentioned earlier that I'd had a section of mine performed live on an episode of Octothought. Well, that section has now been transcribed into print and is going to be available for the first time in this little booklet, which is in theory published for EasterCon, but it was ready before, so I've brought a few down here. And if anyone wants to pay me £4 or more, they will get that segment of the TAF report, some extracts from my previously published novels, plus a chapter from my next novel that won't be out before 2026 at the earliest, and an original short story and a few other little bits of goodies. So, you know, anyone who's going to be at EasterCon will be able to pick one up there. Anyone here who fancies one and is not going to be at EasterCon, come and grab me.
And in that, I just mentioned in that vein that if anyone hasn't picked up a copy of Little Book 14, the most recent issue, there's still a few in the back room, and it contains 2 pages of Alan Stewart's Duff report from his trip in 1994. A whole 500 words and 7 photographs. And I've been told that we need to wrap up. Something in my head said Dave is waving at me. He's not raving yet. So we're gonna wrap up, and then we'd like everyone to leave. Actually, we do want to clear this room so the hotel can set up for the banquet. And it's been suggested you could all go into the back room and out into the garden area we can group there for photographs and gossip. You can also go out the other door if you don't want your picture taken. I guess.
Yeah. No, midday to 12:45 at the time.
Yes, and we're supposed to start getting out of here about 11:45. So, yeah, any final very quick statements the panelists want to make?
Yeah, well, there's an old saying that there are 2 views of fandom. Fandom is, you know, a way of life or a goddamn hobby. But Teresa Nielsen Hayden, herself a TAF winner, made the point somewhere between the two that fandom is a goddamn good hobby. I think that one of the best things about it are the fan funds.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for the Live Corflu 50 invitation.
If they were here, I'm sure Nick and Jen would say the same. Okay. All right, wait on. Go home. Go home.
Go away.
No, we need somebody.
Because they probably need to 25 anyway, because it's not so